Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us today. Today, we will be covering withdrawals and two out of the three correction scenarios that you're seeing on this graphic today. I will be taking questions at the end, but if you do have a question and you don't want to lose track of it, please use the Q&A feature in Zoom. We will be pulling questions from that once we wrap up the walkthrough. So before we jump into the walkthrough section, I wanted to go over a little bit about the first two columns that we're covering today. There are essentially three phases that your application, or what we call service requests, also known as SRs, there are three phases that it can go through over its submission lifecycle. Once the SR is submitted, it usually falls into that first category where it's waiting to be picked up by our specialists for examination. This status is usually called pending or pending review. In this time period, you have the most amount of flexibility. If you want to withdraw the SR, you can do that, and you may even be eligible for a refund if you withdraw within 7 calendar days after being submitted and before examination begins. There is a section in the special pilot program rules, section 9, that talks a little bit more about this. Before examination begins, you can pretty much correct anything in your SR. Did you upload the wrong document by accident? If so, you can change it as long as your application is in this pending status. Did your document not include any of the signatures that you needed to have? No problem. You can change it as long, again, it's still in this pending status. And you can make as many corrections as you like, because at this point, none of our staff members have picked it up yet. Now, as soon as it's picked up, the status will change from pending review to in review. And this is the part where I really encourage and emphasize that you review your SR prior to submission, because the in review part, the second column, is a lot limited in what you can change when you go through your correction. And also, the pending or pending review window is a lot shorter than the paper submission process. And I emphasize this even more for special handling, because when you submit a special handling SR, it skips the wait and goes from submitted directly to a staff member, and that status goes from draft directly to in review. So you don't even get to go into that pending review column. Once the status changes to in review, and that takes us to our second column here on this graphic, your options become much more limited for withdrawal and corrections. First of all, you can still withdraw when the status is in review, but you will no longer be eligible for a refund. Second, you cannot just open up an SR and freely make updates, corrections, or amplifications. Someone has to send that SR back to you. And if that SR does come back into your possession, you will not be able to update the signatures within your document, and you will not be able to replace the document. You can, however, correct indexing information and certification statements. We do have a third category on corrections after an SR is approved, but we'll save that walkthrough for the webinar that happens at the end of this month. And also, in case you would like a copy of this graphic, it is available in the most current version of our FAQ document on our website. Sean will put a direct link to the FAQs in the chat, so that's available to you if you want to refer back to it. All right, so I am a big fan of visuals, so let's jump into the walkthrough where I can show you these first two scenarios in the graphic for both the withdrawal and the corrections. All right, so hopefully you are seeing my desktop right now, my browser. Did I lose it? I think I lost it.
Saw it there for a minute, can, but I think it just disappeared.
Okay, let me try this again. The joys of a live demo. All right,
Always
hopefully
exciting.
it is back up.
I can see the application screen.
Great, great. So I'm going to go ahead and pick an SR. I'm going to pick SR 160611. For those that are unfamiliar with the screen, this is the application dashboard. This is available to you when you first log in after the welcome screen if you're a first-time user. But once you've started submitting SRs, this is the first screen that you'll see after you log in. So I have a couple that's in my queue right now. Some of them are in different statuses. I'm going to go ahead and pick SR 160611, which is in draft, and I just need to complete this SR. And the reason that I'm doing this is because I want to get it to a state where the withdrawal is possible. You cannot withdraw something that was never previously submitted, because if you just didn't want to submit it, you can always delete it and no one would be the wiser. So I'm going to go ahead and submit this. I'm going to go ahead and pay for it. I sign for it. I certify that I have the ability to submit this SR, and I am going to go ahead and check out. All right. So here I am on the application review page. I just have submitted my SR. It says right here in the blue banner, your application has been successfully submitted. And if you look down a little bit further, there is a drop-down box here that asks if you want to take additional actions. And I emphasize the word additional because if you just wanted to submit, you can stop here. But if you wanted to do something more than just a submit, like adding on a withdrawal action, that's where this drop-down box comes in. So I have a couple options here. I can duplicate this application, correct this application, or withdraw this application. I'm going to try to make this a little bit bigger for folks to see. So duplicate, correct, and withdraw. So I'm going to go ahead and select withdraw this application. Once I select withdraw this application, the system will give me a warning message that tells me a little bit more information about what the withdrawal and the refund criteria are. Here you can see that once you confirm your withdrawal, you'll no longer be able to edit or submit this application. If the Copyright Office has started examining your application, you will not be eligible for a refund. It'll tell you, skipping ahead, it says the office will determine if you're eligible for a partial or full refund. Applications withdrawn after 7 calendar days from the creation date are not eligible for a refund. So you have to confirm this to withdraw the application. So I'm going to go ahead and hit confirm. See my notification that pops up here. And as soon as I have withdrawn this application, it will disappear from my my draft folder, my pending, my in review. It's actually going to go into my closed bucket. So over here, you can see 160611 has been withdrawn, and that's today's date. So that's the easiest of the withdrawal scenarios. So let's go back and take a look at my SRs again. And let's say that I have an SR that is in review, like 160605 over here. And basically, I just changed my mind and wanted to withdraw it for some reason. And I can do that. But keep in mind, since this is in review, you're no longer eligible for a refund because a specialist has already picked this SR up for review. So I'm going to go ahead and click into it. And because it's already in review, it automatically takes me to the application review page where it says this application has been successfully submitted. And if I want to add on another action, like withdrawing this SR, I can go ahead and use the drop-down menu to do that. All right, and it gives me that same warning box that it wants me to go through. And if I hit confirm, I'll be able to withdraw this SR. And here you can see SR 160605 is withdrawn. And in my closed filter, I have 2 SRs that I have withdrawn so far. Now let's say that you have an SR that's currently in your hands, meaning that the Copyright Office has returned it back to you for corrections, and it's under this under correction state. That means someone had sent it back to you to make edits. And maybe after some conversation and just some correspondence, you decide that you don't want to record it for some reason. And let's see, let's use 160598, the one up here at the top. And you can see that I have some correspondence here from a specialist, from an examiner, so which means that someone has already picked it up for review. And in this scenario, I would not be eligible for a refund if I were to withdraw this SR because it was already picked up by an examiner prior to that under correction status. So again, this situation, we're just going through it. After a lot of conversation, you just choose to withdraw it. So for this one, it's a little bit tricky because when you click on the SR, it automatically takes you to your submission wizard because it thinks you're going to be making edits to this SR. But if you choose to withdraw, you just simply need to navigate back to the review page. You can either do that through this button up here, or there's a review application button on the pay and submit page. And it'll give you an additional actions for this application. Once you get to this page, then you can choose to withdraw the application. Here's the warning again. I'll go ahead and hit confirm. And you'll see I have withdrawn 3 SRs now. 160598 being the one that I just withdrew. Now, I want to spend a quick moment to discuss the difference between a withdrawal and a rejection. A withdrawal is something that you as the remitter choose to do. And it's not because the document was not recordable, but it's that you changed your mind on the submission. And the refund scenario for withdrawals is very different than the refund scenarios for rejections. The rejection, on the other hand, usually has grounds on why the SR could not be recorded. It falls under a different refund workflow, and if your SR is rejected, the office does keep the base fee and will refund the rest if there is a remainder. For example, let's say that you have an SR that was sent back to you for corrections, and after some conversation, it turns out the document is not recordable and it's eligible for a rejection. If you choose to withdraw the SR, you will not be eligible for any refund because that SR was already in that in review status. However, if you send it back to the specialist and let them reject it, then you'll be eligible for a refund after we keep the $95 base fee. Again, if you want more details on this, please refer to Section 9 of the Special Pilot Program Rules. It does talk about payments and refunds in a little bit more detail there. And I will emphasize that rejections are only applicable for documents that are not recordable based on regulations and policies. The Copyright Office will not issue rejections for documents that are eligible for recordation, but just that the remitter changed their mind on submission. All right, so let's move on to corrections. I have a couple more SRs that I can work with here. Let's look at SR 160621. So I am going to go ahead and submit this. All right, so I have 2 works here. Total for this order is $155. I'm going to go ahead and pay for it. Certify that I have the ability to submit. Give my electronic signature here. And I'm going to go ahead and check out. All right, so now, as you can see, this SR is in the pending review status right here. So earlier I mentioned pending review is where the SR has been submitted. You can see the blue bar here, it has been submitted, but it hasn't been picked up for review yet. And this is the window where you have the most amount of flexibility in what you can change. So if I realized after submitting this that there is something that I need to correct, I can make a correction to any part of this SR and I can pull it right back. Once this SR is picked up for review, my correction options are much more limited. So I'll go ahead and use this additional actions dropdown, and instead of hitting withdraw, I'm going to go ahead and start a correction by clicking correct this application. The system will give me a warning that provides a little bit more information about corrections and how certain types of corrections may impact the date of recordation. Please read this. I'm going to go ahead and confirm so we can look at the correction section. And because the system has seen that this is pending review, it's not going to ask you for anything else. It's going to take you straight back into the SR so you can make changes. So here, let's say that I accidentally uploaded the wrong picture. Oops, this is not the right document. Maybe I need to make changes to that. Then I can go back and upload a new document, for example. So here I uploaded a new document. This looks much better. This is what I wanted to upload. Glad I caught that before someone picked it up. And since I uploaded a new document, I have to go ahead and make some certification statements here. Is it the true and correct copy? I'm going to say yes for this demo. Does it meet all of the recordation eligibility criteria? I'm going to say yes. If there's anything else I need to change. And let's see the parties. I can make changes to the parties if I need to. I can make changes to the works if I need to. And then same thing with contacts. And then I'm going to look at the pay and submit. I'm going to take a pause here because right now I've made nothing, no corrections in here that would change the fee for this. Even though I'm on the pay and submit tab and I still have to go through it, I don't have to pay anything because I've already paid the $155 earlier. So if you look over here, total for this order is 0. I already paid $155. All I did was change a document. So it's not going to ask me to do anything else. So if I say, yes, I certify this, I go ahead and sign, I can go ahead and submit it. And you'll see that the payment methods here are grayed out because I don't need a payment. I'm not going to submit this right now because I do want to talk about a couple other things for the fee difference. So let me go back. And let's say that right now I have 2 works. Let's say I added more works to take me up to the next fee tier. Maybe this document had 55 works and I accidentally only did 2 before I submitted. So now that's my part of my correction. I'm going to go ahead and upload some works here just because it'll take me a while to type in 50 more titles. And if I go back to my pay and submit page, now it's asking me to make a payment because I paid $155 earlier, but with the new titles, it actually took me up to $320. So you can see the fee breakdown over here. But because I already paid $155, the total for this order is now $165. I have to pay that difference. And you can see the payment options here are now re-enabled, so I can figure out whether I want to pay it by a credit card, debit card, ACH, or whether to use a deposit account. Very similarly, if I go back to the works and I deleted all of the titles, let's say this was a no title document, and I go to pay and submit, then I'm actually knocked into a lower fee tier. I paid $155. This SR is now only worth $95. So the system will keep track of it. And once you check out, it will automatically put a refund request for you and route that to our accounting department for processing. So that's all automatic. You don't need to call us. The system will put it in for you. Once the accounting office processes it, you'll get that $60 back. Let's go back to Works. All right, so I'm now back in the scenario where I have to pay a fee difference. This is $320. I have to pay an extra $165. I'm going to go ahead and make that payment. All right. I also need to certify that I have the authority to make this submission, re-sign, and then I'm going to check out. And once I check out and I see this blue banner that says it's been successfully submitted, I'm done. I don't need to do anything else. Please don't use this drop-down box to do anything unless you want to start a new workflow, like starting a withdrawal or starting another correction. But if you don't need to do anything else, you're done when you see this blue banner that says it's been submitted already. I also want to point out the payment information. On 1/5 earlier, I made that $155 payment. As part of the correction, I made $165. So it does keep track of all the payments that you've made to contribute to this SR amount down here. So this is the correction scenario for that pending status. Again, the pending status is gives you the most amount of flexibility because you're able to pull that SR right back and make changes to any part of that SR. Now let's talk about corrections during review. Let me go back to my application dashboard here. All right, so there are two sub-scenarios under corrections for corrections during review. The first scenario is that you as the remitter, you found something and you want to make a change. And the second scenario is that the examiner found something and they want you to make a change. So for the first scenario, I'll open up 160606, this one right here. And you'll see that this is in the process of being reviewed. So status is in review here. All right. So let's go ahead and start a correction. Maybe because I realized I need to fix a title, I typed it incorrectly. But in other words, I, as the remitter, I found a mistake and I'm asking the remitter, the examiner, to send it back to me so I can fix it. So I'm going to go ahead and choose correct this application to start my request. And you'll notice that this warning box looks a little bit different. Because it's in review, you now have to say why you're making the change and what kind of changes that you'll make. So I'll provide a reason here. All right, and this explanation will go to the examiner and the examiner will have to determine whether they want to send it back to you or not based on the policies that they follow for corrections. So I'm going to confirm here, and this is going to get sent over to the examiner. If this is accepted, you'll see your SR change from in review to under correction status, and the SR will fall back under the draft filter, which also means that the SR is also considered to be unsubmitted. So I'm going to go into the back end here, pretend to be an examiner. I'm going to go ahead and approve that correction request. So you'll see here that it's pending approval on your side. So I'm going to go look for 160606 over here. And I am going to go ahead and approve this for corrections. All right, so I have a couple notifications here. Let me take a look at what's going on here. One is that it says my correction request has been approved. So 160606 is available for corrections. I also have a new message here. Here's SR 1606 from the examiner saying that this has been approved. Your application is now reopened and returned back to you. Please make the requested corrections and resubmit. And even from this mailbox here, I can jump directly into the SR. So this will now take me to the submission wizard. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and make edits, but take a look at this upload box. It is disabled. And it's because my SR was before the correction was allowed, it was in review. Therefore, the document cannot be changed. And the system is programmed this way because it's required to follow the Copyright Office policies and rules where that the document cannot be changed once review or examination has begun. But I'm able to make other edits to other parts of the SR. So I can update my certifications. I can update some indexing information down here. Document headers, date of execution, etc. I can also make edits to the party information, works information, basically all of the indexing information that comes with the submission wizard. So I'm going to go ahead and make changes here. I'm going to add another party. And then I'm going to go ahead and add some works. For this one, maybe I'll go ahead and add an AKA here. Fix this. Make it plural. And I'll go ahead and make the changes I need to make. All right. Then back to the Pay and Submit tab. Just to remember, the same rules apply for fee differences. You are responsible for any outstanding balances, if any is incurred, as you make these corrections. The system will also keep track of refunds in case your SR ends up in a lower fee tier based on the changes you make. But for this one, I didn't make any changes, so the total for this order is 0. And please remember to always resubmit your SR. If you do not resubmit your corrections, the examiner will not be able to examine that SR because it's still in your court. And if you look at the review, which I always recommend that you do, it will also tell you that your application has not been submitted yet. So after reviewing it, please complete the checkout steps to ensure that the application is received by the Copyright Office. So here I'll go through the process again. Every time you resubmit, you have to certify, even though you don't pay anything, you have to certify that you have the ability to, you have the authority to submit. You have to provide an electronic signature. And then I'll go ahead and check out. So once you get to the application review page, you see this blue banner, you're done, you don't need to do anything else. Since you didn't make any more payments, it's still the original payment for this SR, which was done back in December, and you're good to go. So that covers the first scenario where you are requesting, you as the remitter are requesting for a change. Let me go back to the SR. All right. The second scenario is that the examiner is the one that noticed something, and then they want you to make a correction. And this usually comes in the form of correspondence. So if I go to my message here, I have this SR 160597, and it says, hey, this application is reopened and returned back to you. Please make the requested corrections and resubmit. Dear Sue Stanley, which was a remitter who submitted this SR, shows that the works listed in your document does not match the works you provided for indexing information. So let's go ahead and make this change. All right, so let's jump right into it. SR 160597. Now again, I can click on this link, or I can get to it through the application dashboard, 160597. But either way, it will take me back to the SR submission wizard. And here it is. This is the submission wizard, and you still cannot upload a file because it was previously in the in-review status, which prohibits you from uploading a file. The system does make you review that your certifications are correct. So you do have to scroll down to hit next to get to the rest of the SR to make edits. Once you hit next, you can freely move through anything here. Then I'm going to go ahead and upload some works. All right, so I have a bunch of stuff here now in the Works tab that I just uploaded. I'm going to go to my Pay and Submit. I have to pay a difference of $165. If I go to the review page, same thing. It has not been submitted yet. I'm going to return. I'll just go ahead and pay for it with my deposit account that I set up. And assuming everything looks good after my review, I'm just going to go ahead and say, yes, I have the authority to submit. Go ahead and sign. My sign date here, and then I'm going to check out. And here we go. On 11/28, I submitted this SR. I paid $155 for it. Today's January. I paid another $165 for my correction, and the SR totals up to $320. So now that I'm all paid up and checked out, my SR is submitted. I'm good. I'm done, and that's how I handle corrections for during review. All right, Sean, can we go back to the slides?
Sure can. Here we are on the statuses.
Fantastic. So I want to point out a few statuses that are important to know. I brought the slide back from the previous webinar that we had that talks about all the different statuses that you see on your application dashboard. The first one I want to point out is that if your SR is in that draft status, it means that they are not submitted to the Copyright Office. This would include the SRs that you might have just started and never submitted at all. And this also includes the SRs that were pulled back for corrections, whether you pulled them back or you requested a correction, or if the examiner sent something back to you for corrections. But if anything falls under that quote unquote under correction status, it will be in the draft and it's considered unsubmitted. Once you resubmit your corrections, that means you've made all your corrections, you went through the Pay and Submit tab, certified, signed, and checked out. The SR returns to the previous status before it went into under corrections. So let's say that you pulled it out in that pending status for corrections. After you resubmit, the SR will go back into that pending status. Let's say you were making corrections for something that was previously in review, whether you requested a pullback or whether the examiner sent it over to you. After you resubmit that SR, the SR will return to that in review status. You're not going to go back to the pending queue.